Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head.
Welcome to the Workout Nerd Up. I'm Julio Lopez. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, a certified personal trainer, and I've got my master's degree in nutrition. Here are 3 reasons why your back is hurting when you squat. Reason number 1, anterior pelvic tilt. I call this the Instagram pose squat because the butt is being pushed back super duper far and it's creating a pronounced arch in the back. Think of the structure of the back. You have bone segments called vertebrae that are stacked up on top of each other. In between each vertebrae is an intervertebral disc. Running down the back is a spinal cord, which is basically a superhighway of nerves. When under load, or carrying weight, and going into anterior pelvic tilt, this creates an uneven pressure on the intervertebral discs. And over time, this can actually cause some of the discs to move and push up against the spinal cord. Again, remember, that's a superhighway of nerves, so it's gonna hurt a lot. Number 2 is a posterior pelvic tilt. Unlike the anterior pelvic tilt where you're sticking the butt out, the posterior pelvic tilt is when you allow the tailbone to tuck under, kind of like a scared puppy when it's tucking in its tail. Just like the anterior pelvic tilt, this creates an uneven pressure on the intervertebral disc, and over time, this can cause the disc to move and push up against the spinal cord. Remember, the spinal cord running down the back is like a superhighway of nerves, which is why back injuries can feel so debilitating. To prevent injuring your back either with posterior or anterior pelvic tilt, make sure that you brace that core super duper tight. Imagine that somebody's going to punch you in the stomach and you don't want the wind knocked out of you. Like Mike Tyson is going to punch you in the stomach. You got to tighten up that core super duper tight. Make sure you do that for every lift, including your warm-up sets. Also, maintain a neutral posture for the duration of every repetition, and don't allow the back to bend, because remember, that's what's going to cause the intervertebral disc to move around, push against its spinal cord. Number 3, excessive torso lean. Back when I was in high school, the rule was you don't allow the knees to pass the toes. This was thought that allowing the knees to pass the toes would create a whole lot of stress on the knees, and over time, it'd be bad for the knees. This came about in a study going as far back as the 1960s. It was actually disproven just a few years later, but evidently the damage was done. Even today, you still hear people telling others don't allow the knees to pass the toes because that's bad for the knees. In Fry et al. 2003, researchers determined that while squatting with the knees behind the toes reduced the stress on the knees, this increased the stress on the lower back, thus increasing the risk of a low back injury, especially when under heavy load. Now here's the thing, if you have a pre-existing knee injury, get that taken care of. Go see your doctor or physical therapist, get that treated now. Especially don't start squatting yet until you get that treated. If your knees are okay, aim to keep the barbell path going down in a straight line, aligned with the middle part of your foot. To have this happen, you got to allow the torso to lean forward naturally and the knees to come forward naturally. You don't want to drive the knees too far forward too soon, because that can lead to increased stress on the knees, and yes, that could be bad for the knees. But if you first make the hips slide back and then start bending at the knees, that can reduce the amount of stress on the knees and allow you to squat safely. The thing to remember, the deeper you squat, the more the knees are going to come forward. There's really no way around that. So I hope that helped, and don't forget to hit that follow button.